At long last stand in the final chapters of his life, Michael Jackson broke a silence that had shadowed his artistic brilliance for decades, speaking up about Prince in a profoundly honest and deeply personal confession that no fan or critic had anticipated, because while the world knew their public rivalry juxtaposing pop theatrics with funk mystique, moonwalk glitz against guitar virtuosity, Michael revealed that beneath all the spectacle was a wound unnoticed by most, the aching sense of kinship unreceived in comparison unending, and silence so heavy it had shaped his emotional landscape. And in this long-buried interview, made just months before his passing, he acknowledged that he carried a long-held belief that being paired with Prince in media narratives drained his sense of unique identity, creating a competition he never asked for but could never fully escape. And yet simultaneously, he spoke of a deep admiration for Prince's artistry of perfectionists, respect that intensified the rivalry he once dismissed, and that inside him, even as he channeled energy into groundbreaking albums and performances, he was wrestling with envy, longing for acceptance, and a fear that he would always be measured, not by his own sound, but by how he measured up to the man he never got to know beyond the stage lights. Michael recounts their first meeting backstage at an award show to pop icons, approaching each other in solemn nods, and how the world called it mutual respect while he felt the weight of unspoken expectations, as if a silent scoreboard of talent and belonging had been imposed, and that moment stayed with him, fueling later tensions that he never voiced until now. A burden he carried during global tours when requests to perform tributes to Prince felt like tests of emotional balance, and during every public comparison he heard each one wound tighter around his sense of itself, amplifying isolation. Michael could sell out arenas and break records, but he questioned whether he would ever free himself from comparison's cage, and he revealed that this psychic tension contributed to episodes of self-assessment and emotional withdrawal during recording sessions, when he sought refuge in layers of song and dance. Convinced that performance promised belonging that silence denied, in describing this internal conflict, he shared poignant recollections writing nights spent listening to Prince records on repeat, practicing melodies not as homage but to understand artistry he felt he could never surpass, and onstage moments, where even, in the height of choreography, his mind drifted to questions of self-worth, fear, and context that the audience could never see. He described private letters he never sent, drafts where he thanked Prince for setting a bar he could pursue, but also admitted how painful it felt that he never received reciprocal mentorship or affection. Silence he framed not as rejection, but absence, and in this confession, Michael acknowledged a regret he carried to the end, that he never offered Prince a gesture of vulnerability, never told him that beneath the sequins and gloved hands lived a man yearning for creative kinship, rather than rivalry. He confessed that in refusing to reach out personally, he contributed to a cycle where two geniuses remained emotionally distant because they were too afraid to let ego slip and connection flourish, and though their music influenced each other's sound and style, they never connected in a way that transcended public narrative. He lamented that deeply. The repercussions of Michael's revelation were immediate and widespread. Music historians re-examined their joint award presentations and televised moments through a fresh lens, no longer devoid of meaning, but laden with emotional weight. Psychologists framed the confession as a lesson in how high-profile comparison can damage identity when self-worth depends on external scores. Mental health advocates in the music industry cited it as evidence that emotional care must accompany creative power, urging for mandatory therapy and peer support systems in artist development. Fans across forums shifted from fueling rivalry to initiating healing, launching campaigns like #MichaelLovedBrotherhood, sharing essays and reflections on how his art reflected both greatness and grief, and challenging others to honor both artists without compounding comparison. Family memoirs from both camps surfaced, siblings and associates recalling late-night conversations that echoed the themes Michael finally voiced, confirming that backstage, the perception of competition created emotional separation rather than collaboration. And those memoirs included remarks about how executives once advised both artists to keep things private to avoid market confusion, effectively discouraging them from meaningful outreach. Documentaries produced by Streaming Networks Incorporated, Michael's recording, pairing it with rare unheard footage from home video moments to rehearsal sessions, showing glimpses of vulnerability that made viewers weep, not for an icon, but for the human who wasn't allowed to break. Legacy Media devoted programs to charting the emotional cost of fame, framing Michael's confession as not commentary, but emotional testimony, and fan-driven tributes shifted from recreating performances to offering mental health donations, educational program tie-ins, and letters to young performers encouraging emotional awareness, transforming fandom from worship to action. Meanwhile, critics tried to dismiss Michael's late confession as revisionist or posthumous drama, but many in the entertainment and wellness community saw it differently, as a powerful act of emotional reconciliation, a man reclaiming self beyond snapshot comparisons, and a fearless critique of the very culture that once demanded he surpass Prince on stage only to deny himself connection off it. Michael's final words offered lessons beyond music. That rivalry isn't always external. Sometimes it lives inside us, created by childhood comparison, by brand-inflicted identity, by culture's hunger for drama, and that silence may preserve myth, but it often walls pain. That reaching across perceived divides, saying, I feel small compared to why I admire you, as not weakness, but courage. That creative legacy is not built by eclipsing another, but by honoring your own voice. And that healing begins not with performance, but with confession. He told fans, appreciate me, but don't erase his presence from mine. Our stories are parallel. Let both pieces live. And as he spoke of that regret he carried silently for years, the world felt his sorrow as reckoning, not rumor. In communities, worldwide music schools, therapy centers, creative collectives, his testimony became central to curriculum on trauma in performance, teaching young artists that greatness can shatter if no one hears your fear beneath the song. The music industry began evaluating mental wellness programs as part of talent takeoffs, influenced by both Michael's biography and his final words, seeing them not as celebrity excess, but urgent signals. And through it all, Michael's confession about Prince became not a tabloid twist, but cultural medicine, a reminder that even legends need care. Identity needs clarity, and even the biggest stages cannot mask a heart silenced by comparison. That sometimes real healing lies not in being known, but in being seen for who you are, not what you're compared to. And in that long emotional testimony before his death, Michael Jackson offered more than a memory. He offered reconciliation, legacy, with emotion, and with a silent brother who deserves not competition but compassion, and left behind the greatest anthem of all. That art may immortalize but empathy redeems, and our greatest tribute to legend may be simply to listen.
Please don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon.